Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys checking today's video out. Today, we're getting close to the month of June starting, and I want to talk about seasonal movements and patterns of fish in June, by bass in June, because really guys, in my opinion, June is the most complex month of the year as far as how fish transition. Fish are always in a state of transition as far as where they're at, their moods and their personality. So we're going to talk about this. And this video is sort of like one of those videos that people don't watch much, because when you talk about something like bass movement and bass behavior, a lot of people tune out because it's something that requires a little bit of effort. As far as it's sort of like sitting in a classroom, as far as I have listened to somebody lecture. It's not quite as exciting as if I show you guys like a new bait color, but I promise you guys will come out of this video with a lot of good information here. So one of the things that you'll find out about bass, and one of the things that I really love about bass fishing, it's something that's constantly changing, something that's dynamic, never the same with that. Especially if you're in a body of water that is situated where you have four distinct seasons. Now, some parts of the country, like if you're up north or up south, or far north or far south, you don't have the seasons that you do in the majority of the country. But when you live in a part of the country where you have a distinct spring, summer, fall, and winter, as far as the temperate conditions go, bass behave in a really certain way as far as their seasonal pattern. So June is one of those months that there's just a lot going on. So anyway, when you're talking about June, guys, in the typical man-made lake across the lake, there are still some fish that are maybe still spawning. Even if you're in a part of the country like I'm at here in Missouri, in the first part of June, there can still be some late spawners. There can be some fat bass that have been done spawning since the first part of April. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. But for the most part, here's what you're going to find out is, in June, bass, there's two distinct populations of bass, probably more than ever, as far as that are really actively feeding. Now, when we talk about bass behavior and why bass bite lures, you guys have heard me talk about it before. Very seldom, in my opinion, do bass bite because they're hungry, other than night. I think most fish feed at night for the course of the year. But in the month of June, a lot of the fish, if they've done spawning, they're hungry. They've depleted their resources from either the actual spawning process, or the males have been guarding eggs, and they're exhausted. So they're hungry and feeding. It's different. Certain other times of the year, those fish there's two different populations of fish, shallow and deep, but they're not really actively feeding like they are in the month of June. So from that standpoint, June is a really good month to fish, because the fish are actively chasing to feed. Okay, let's talk about the two different populations of fish. In the equation of the shallow fish here, you can't overlook the aspect of the perch as far as the prey of the bass. Now, I don't care if you've got white perch, yellow perch, black perch, bluegills, pumpkin seeds, whatever. In June, there's a lot of the perch that start spawning. And on top of that, there's still some shad spawning going on. And when you have this big population of spawning perch that move back into the same type of areas that the bass spawned into, you got half the bass in the lake, guys, that are still in shallow water. There is a lot of bass in June, even in clear water lakes, that live in less than 3 foot of water during the whole month. And all they do is cruise the bank looking for those spawning perch. Now, all you have to do is, if you're in a lake that has water visibility of anything over 2.5 feet or so, just go back in some flat coves and you'll see the perch beds back in there. The perch, they bed in areas that look like honeycombs, or they're beds that have been fanned out, but they're real close together. They're not like bass beds that are more isolated. And those bass will hang in and around there, and it's not like they go back in there and they just go for a free-for-all feeding on any bluegill that's back in there. They go back in there, they live in those areas, and when they get hungry, they may go up and chase and try to get one of them. But it keeps them shallow all year long, and it's a really good way to catch them on a variety of different lures. Walking topwaters are good, swim jigs are good, floating worms, flukes, that type of stuff are good, frogs. just really depends on the cover you have available on the bank, and then, you know, whatever water clarity is with that as far as your lure technique. So you got that going on. And then, like I said, a lot of people are real familiar with the post-spawn offshore deeper bite in June. This is another option, even if you have off-colored water. If you have a body of water that has any type of water clarity over about 18 inches or so, you're gonna have half of the fish that are moving out deeper after they get done spawning in June. And this is one of the best times of the year to catch schools of big fish. A lot of you guys that like to deep crank or drag a football head jig or fish a big Texas rig worm, this is the time of year. This is probably the second best time of the year to catch big fish, and lots of them over like March when they're in the pre-spawn, because when half of that fish population goes deep, they school up in schools of anywhere between 5 to 20 feet deep. And it used to be famous on like the TVA lakes back before everybody got onto it and people started really exploiting that pattern. You know, that was like back in the days of David Fritz. They'd find these offshore schools of bass and TVA lakes in June and just blow everybody away with that. But when those fish move offshore in June, there's a couple different things they do that's different. First of all, when I'm talking about offshore, I don't mean like super deep. They just get out there sort of in that, I don't know, 5 to 12 foot zone. It seems to be magical in June. Flatter points, secondary main lake points, ledges if you got ledges, any type of a hard structure break. Not really brush so much, but more of a hard structure break. The drop-offs can be subtle too. A lot of those post-spawn June fish, you can have like a flat point and it may only drop off 3 or 4 feet, just roll off like that, and they like to get on those type of areas. And really good time of year to catch them like on a you know, deep diving crankbait, you know, just bouncing that bottom and through there. It's probably my favorite. A little bit early, so you can still catch some fish on a spoon and a hair jig depending upon where you're at, but man, I really like that deep diving crankbait there. So one of the things that you have to realize in the month of June, this is the two things that fish do the most. Now, every lake is going to have a situation unique to its own, because if you're in Florida, this doesn't apply to that. Or if you're in like a mud pit area, say you're fishing a river system that's got real dirty water, obviously that doesn't apply, but it does apply to man-made reservoirs. Another good technique, guys, for June, we talked about the walking topwater in the back of the coves, but also a walking topwater or like a wake bait or something like that can be really good out on the same main lake and secondary points that guys are deep cranking. If you've got clear water, if you've got water visibility that's like over 4 foot, June is one of my favorite months to catch fish in. But anyway, guys, that's just a couple different things bass do in the month of June in traditional lakes. Now, like I said, if you've got a super clear lake or super dirty lake, it's going to be different. But for the most part, there's going to be some type of bite out there with that. And another thing that happens is June is like the last really good month to fish, because after June, when you start getting into July, August, and September, it just gets tougher. And the reason it gets tougher, it's not necessarily because it gets hotter, but the fish just start spreading out more. It's like, instead of having half the population in real shallow water and half the population in a real predictable offshore depth, you'll have a percentage of the fish that move out and suspend. And then that's when the live scopers get them. And then you'll have some that still hold on structure like brush piles. You'll have some that start roaming isolated targets on the bank, and they'll set up on like on a lay down log, or they get on a boat dock or something like that. But in general, it just gets tougher. They just don't bite as good. They're harder to find. So take advantage of the month of June, because it's a really good time to catch some good ones. So anyway, hope it helps out, guys. This is just a little tidbit of information in the encyclopedia of bass fishing that's massive. So just hope you guys learned something from that. See you guys later.